In the year 2497, the Horizon Breaker, humanity's most advanced exploration ship, moved steadily toward the mysterious edge of known space, a place called the Galactic Wall. This wall was not like any other space boundary. It was a massive energy field that stretched beyond the reach of any previous mission. Scientists and explorers alike had long believed it to be an impenetrable barrier, a cosmic wall holding back the vast unknown. For decades, rumors and old legends had whispered about what might lie beyond it: unmapped stars, strange signals, or perhaps nothing at all. But the people aboard the Horizon Breaker were driven by curiosity and hope, eager to uncover what lay hidden on the other side. Captain Lyra Chen, a calm and determined leader, watched the glowing lines of the galactic wall grow larger on the ship's view screen. Around her, the crew prepared for the impossible, their fingers tight on controls, hearts beating faster as the energy field shimmered ahead. The ship's sensors were picking up strange fluctuations, patterns that suggested the wall was changing, weakening even. No one could be sure what would happen if they tried to cross it, but the crew knew that turning back would mean leaving the greatest mystery of their age unsolved. As the Horizon Breaker approached the barrier, a low hum filled the ship, subtle but steady, like a living heartbeat from the cosmos itself. The walls of the ship seemed to vibrate slightly under the pressure of the energy field, but the shields held firm. Then, without warning, a sudden pulse radiated from the wall, washing over the vessel like a wave of light and sound. For a moment, time seemed to stretch and warp. The stars outside twisted, the controls flickered, and a strange calm fell over everyone aboard. Then the ship passed through. The view screen cleared, and the crew gasped in wonder. Before them stretched a vast expanse of space unlike any they had ever seen. Stars burned in unfamiliar constellations, massive rings of debris floated silently, and enormous structures, ancient and silent, hovered in the distance, their surfaces covered in unknown symbols glowing faintly in the dark. It was as if they had entered a new universe, a place untouched by any civilization known to humankind. But there was no time for celebration. The ship's AI sent an alert. Communications with Earth and all known space stations had vanished. They were cut off. Yet a strange signal pulsed from one of the nearby stations, a message encoded in a pattern that felt oddly familiar. Captain Chen ordered a course toward the largest station, curiosity overpowering caution. As they approached, the details became clearer. The station was massive, orbiting a black star that bent light and time around it. The surface was a patchwork of metal and stone, worn but intact, with corridors and docking bays visible from their sensors. The glowing symbols matched none of the languages in humanity's vast database, but one symbol on the hull pulsed in perfect rhythm with the ship's own systems, as if responding to their presence. The air in the command center thickened with tension as the crew prepared to dock. No one spoke, but their eyes reflected a mix of fear and excitement. An unspoken question hung in the air. What if they were not alone here? What if the wall was not a barrier, but a warning? The Horizon Breaker slowly attached to the ancient station's docking port, and the crew began to prepare for their first steps into the unknown. Every scan revealed more mysteries, shifting shadows, unexpected energy spikes, and the faintest whisper of movement deep within the station's heart. Captain Chen took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew this mission could change everything. Humanity believed about the universe. With the ship secured and a small team assembled, the airlock opened, and the explorers stepped into the cold silence of the forgotten structure, their lights cutting through the darkness. The walls seemed to hum with a silent energy, and the faint glow from the symbols on the surface now surrounded them, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The explorers moved carefully, senses sharp, every shadow a possible threat or a clue. As they ventured deeper, the station's systems suddenly flickered to life, ancient machines humming after untold years of silence. Holograms shimmered in the air, showing images of stars, strange ships, and a race that had once called this place home. The symbols began to rearrange themselves into patterns, forming words that slowly became clear. The Watcher sleeps. Do not wake it. The message sent a chill through the crew, and Captain Chen's voice cut through the tension. "We're not just exploring," she said. "We've stepped into history, and a warning. We have to find out what the Watcher is before it finds us." Outside, the dark void beyond the galactic wall waited silently, its secrets no longer locked away. The horizon breaker had crossed the line, and there was no turning back now. The air inside the ancient station was colder than expected, dry and still, as if time itself had stopped within its massive halls, and every step echoed across smooth metallic floors untouched for countless ages. Captain Lyra Chen led the team carefully, her eyes scanning the flickering lights overhead as the crew walked deeper into the forgotten place. Their flashlights sweeping across strange walls filled with glowing symbols and shifting shapes that made the mind feel uneasy if stared at too long. The deeper they went, the more the station seemed to awaken, not suddenly, but in small ways. A faint breeze where there should be none, a distant humming that grew louder near certain doors, and faint light pulses that followed their movement like some unseen presence was watching. The air was thick with questions, and no one dared to break the silence except for Commander Reese, who whispered that the symbols on the walls were changing slowly, adjusting themselves each time the team passed them, and their patterns were beginning to resemble known structures, as if trying to communicate. The ship's AI, transmitted remotely through a handheld device, confirmed it. The station was studying them, analyzing human behavior, and rewriting its own language to match theirs. It was learning. In one chamber they found a dome-shaped room filled with thin pillars and a platform in the center. When Lyra stepped onto the platform, a massive projection bloomed above her head, displaying moving star maps, ancient fleets, and a tall, thin humanoid figure that seemed to be giving a warning, though its mouth moved without sound. As the team stood in awe, the projection shifted again, showing something more disturbing, an image of the galactic wall itself, from the outside, with thousands of ships lined up before it in neat formation, and then fading away like dust in the wind. The figure pointed toward a large eye symbol, pulsing red, and a single word flashed in a new translated script: Watcher. They now understood that the race who built this place, the Centauri, had once stood guard against something much greater than themselves, and this station was one of many left behind to protect others from making the same mistake. Lyra and her team moved onward, through corridors that bent in impossible directions and rooms where time seemed to flicker strangely, making clocks skip forward or backward by a few seconds. In one chamber, they found dozens of tall, sealed pods lined along the walls, each containing a skeleton of a creature with elongated limbs, sharp features, and hollow eye sockets. Some looked peaceful, while others had clearly died in terror. One pod had shattered, and the remains of the creature inside had decayed into dust, but etched on the glass was another message in shaky script: "We were too late. Do not follow us." The crew's nerves began to wear thin, tension growing as lights flickered, and systems on their suits began showing strange errors, sensors reporting moving shapes that weren't there, heart rates spiking for no reason, whispers only one person at a time could hear. The AI insisted these were not hallucinations, but signs of a deep energy source within the station reacting to them. Lyra ordered the team to regroup and return to the docking point, but on the way, they passed a new hallway that had not been there before, its door now open and waiting. Curiosity, stronger than fear, drew them in. This hall was different. Its walls were made of a smooth, stone-like material that seemed to absorb light, and the floor glowed faintly beneath their boots. At the end of the corridor, they found a massive chamber shaped like a cathedral, its ceiling lost in darkness, and at the center stood a giant machine, humming with silent power. Suspended above it was a black orb, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat, and around it, ancient texts hovered in the air, spinning slowly. Lyra reached out and the texts froze, aligning themselves in rows, and one by one they translated. The story unfolded. Long ago, the Centauri had ruled many galaxies, peaceful and wise, until they discovered a force unlike anything they had seen, something they called the Watcher, a presence that existed outside of time, curious and vast. but not bound by thought or feeling. It had begun to observe the universe, and where it watched too closely, reality began to shift and collapse. The Chintari built great walls across space to contain its reach and constructed machines to keep it dormant, but over time, they began to vanish, one by one, until only their warnings remained. The machine in the chamber was one of the last. Safeguards, holding the watcher's attention in place like a mirror to distract its gaze. But now, with the arrival of the horizon breaker, something had changed. The orb pulsed faster. The AI reported a new signal, one coming not from the station, but from deeper within the uncharted zone beyond the wall. It was rhythmic, like a code, and matched the station's own energy frequency. Something was waking up. The crew stared at each other in silence, understanding the truth without needing to say it. Humanity had not just broken a barrier of space, they had tripped a signal left behind by an ancient race, a signal that would now echo across the void. Lyra stepped back, her voice calm but firm as she gave the order to retreat, to return to the ship and prepare for what might come next. As they hurried through the station, lights behind them dimmed and doors closed silently, as if the place had completed its task. At the docking bay, the crew looked once more at the strange symbols on the outer hull, and now they saw them clearly. They were not warnings. They were instructions. The station had not tried to stop them. It had prepared them, and as the airlock closed and the horizon breaker pulled away, the orb in the distant chamber pulsed one final time, sending a ripple through space. The signal had been heard, and far beyond the stars, something vast stirred in answer. The horizon breaker moved slowly through the dark void, leaving the ancient Centauri station behind, as the stars ahead seemed colder and more distant than before, like silent eyes watching from deep space. Captain Lyra Chen stood on the bridge, staring at the growing signal on the ship's display, a pulse, steady and strong, coming from far ahead, deeper into the uncharted zone. No one spoke much after leaving the station. The crew felt different now, as if they had seen something too big to fully understand. The warning about the Watcher still echoed in their minds, but the signal pulled at their curiosity like a thread they could not ignore. The AI reported that the signal had a strange pattern, almost like a heartbeat, repeating every 26 seconds and growing slightly stronger with each beat. Every sensor sweep returned the same answer. There was nothing visible out there, yet the pulse continued without fail. As the ship approached the region where the signal pointed, things began to change. The lights on the bridge dimmed for a brief moment, and then one by one, small malfunctions began to appear. Communication lines opened without command, doors slid open and closed on their own, and the gravity in one section flickered for half a second before returning. The AI tried to explain it as power fluctuations from an unknown field, but Lyra could tell even the AI was uncertain, its voice slightly delayed and its words more cautious than usual. Then came the voices, soft, broken sounds through the communication system, as if whispers from nowhere had been recorded and played back at random. Some of the crew heard their names being called in the static. Others heard old memories, voices of family or friends long gone. Commander Reese, one of the strongest on the team, woke up in a cold sweat, repeating words in a language no one recognized. The AI recorded and translated the strange words slowly, and the result was chilling. The eye is opening. Still, the pulse continued, leading them closer to something that didn't want to be found, yet waited just the same. The ship's scanners suddenly picked up a large mass ahead, hidden behind a field of warped space. As they moved closer, the field bent light in strange ways, showing reflections that didn't match the ship or its surroundings. Then, like a curtain pulled away, the object revealed itself. A structure so large it filled the view screen, shaped like a sleeping creature with layers of metal and stone grown around a hollow center. It had no engines, no visible openings, and no signs of life. But the pulse was coming from its core. The AI named it Structure Zero, and nothing in human or alien databases could match it. Captain Chen gathered a small team and ordered a remote probe to be sent first, But as soon as the probe neared the surface, its signal vanished. No explosion, no damage, just gone. After a moment of silence, the pulse changed. It became faster, and the crew began to feel it, not just through the ship's systems, but in their bodies. A soft pressure at the base of the skull, a buzzing. Behind the eyes, a feeling like they were being watched, not from outside, but from inside their own thoughts. The AI detected no life signs, yet every deck camera showed shadows moving at the edge of the frames, too quick to identify. Lights flickered with no reason, and in one section of engineering, the air itself shimmered for a moment like heat waves. Crew members reported dreams filled with stars that bled light and voices that told them to listen, to understand, to see. One technician, Ensign Valen, collapsed during a routine check, whispering about an eye in the dark that looked into him and found something familiar. He spoke clearly, even while unconscious. "We woke it, and now it wants to know who we are." Captain Chen knew they couldn't turn back. They had already gone too far, already connected themselves to whatever force lay within the structure. Instead, she ordered the ship to hold orbit while a second probe was prepared, this time coated with a new alloy gathered from the Sinterai station. When launched, it passed through the energy field without disappearing. Inside the structure, the probe found wide, empty halls, floating platforms, and walls that bent around nothing, as if space itself had been shaped by thought. The crew watched in silence as the probe sent back images of what looked like an altar, at the center of which was a shape not unlike the orb from the Kintari chamber, but darker, less stable, and constantly shifting. Before the probe could scan further, the image cut to black, and the pulse stopped. At that same moment, every screen on the horizon breaker turned black, and one word appeared on them. All written in the Chintari's ancient language, but instantly understood by every human eye that looked at it: humanity. The lights returned, systems reset, and everything seemed to return to normal, but the crew knew it was only the beginning. The pulse was gone, replaced by something worse: silence. The AI no longer received any signal from the structure, but the crew began reporting hearing faint voices again, and now they all said the same phrase: "It sees you." The captain met with her officers in the command room, where they discussed theories. One believed the structure was a prison. Another thought it was a vessel of knowledge, and the Watcher wasn't a creature at all, but a force that used awareness as a kind of presence. Reese suggested the worst idea, that the Watcher wasn't waking, but had already awakened the moment they crossed the wall, and everything since then had been it studying them through memories, feelings, and choices. Captain Chen remained calm, but the weight of the truth pressed on her. If the Watcher was not a being in the way they understood, then perhaps the Horizon Breaker hadn't found it at all. Maybe it had found them, and now it was trying to decide what to do. The crew returned to their duties, quiet and uneasy, while the ship remained in orbit around the silent giant. Then the AI detected something new. A small shift in gravity, not from the structure, but from behind them. Something else was coming. Something moving fast through the void, too fast for known propulsion. And it was headed straight for them. Captain Chen stood on the bridge, watching the distant speck on the radar grow closer by the second, her mind racing through every possibility. They had stepped into a place that had remained untouched for longer than humans had existed. Now, something had seen them, and whatever it was no longer hiding. The object came fast, faster than any ship should have been able to move, racing through the void with no visible engines, no heat signature, and no explanation for how it could bend space around. It like soft cloth, and as it neared the horizon breaker, the crew stood frozen on the bridge, watching as the ship's sensors failed to understand what they were seeing, as if the thing approaching wasn't truly there, or was too far beyond human knowledge to be measured at all. And though its shape flickered and changed, sometimes round like a sphere, sometimes tall like a tower, and sometimes just a blur of light, it never slowed, and every second it grew clearer, more real, more present, until finally, just moments before impact, it stopped dead in space a short distance from the human ship, hanging there like a judgment made solid, and for a long moment nothing happened at all. No sound, no movement, no signal, Only a deep and perfect silence that felt like it stretched into the soul of every crew member. Like the space between stars had grown wider and colder, then the black surface of the object began to ripple, and from it emerged a single beam of soft white light that reached out, not in attack, but like a hand, calm and steady, and touched the hull of the horizon breaker without force or damage, simply resting there. And the moment it did, every system on the ship shut down. The engines, lights, air controls, even the backup power, and all that remained active was the emergency lights glowing dim red and the central screen on the bridge, which slowly began to display a new image, not words, but a single eye, deep and ancient, shaped from light and shadow, watching without blinking. And the moment the crew saw it, they all felt the same thing, presence, not just around them, but inside them, like a thought that wasn't their own had entered their minds and was now moving through memories, questions, emotions, testing them one by one like pages in a book. And Captain Lyra Chen stood firm as a soft pressure filled her chest, not painful, but heavy, like standing before a vast mountain that saw everything and forgot nothing. And then she heard a voice, not in her ears, but in her mind, quiet, slow and full of deep wonder, saying only, "Why do you look beyond your place?" And she felt herself struggle to form a thought in reply, not out of fear but awe. And somehow without words, she answered, "To know, to learn, to understand what came before us." And the voice responded, "You seek truth that is not yours." And then showed her visions, stars collapsing into silence, civilizations rising like fire and vanishing like ash, great minds building wonders only to be undone by a gaze from something older than time, something that did not hate or love, only watched. And Lyra understood then that the Watcher was not a destroyer in the way humans feared, but a force of attention so pure that anything it focused on could not remain the same, because observation itself twisted reality, bent it, peeled it open, and made it raw. And those who built the wall, the Centauri, had not tried to protect themselves from being attacked, but from being seen too closely by this eye that lived. Beyond the stars, and now humanity, bold and unaware, had stepped into view, had drawn the gaze, and even now, the eye was learning them, changing them, adapting their thoughts into new patterns. And Lyra turned to her crew and saw them standing in silent unity, their eyes wide but clear, each of them seeing different truths, different pieces of what the Watcher showed. One saw Earth from orbit, slowly growing distant as the universe bent. Another saw ancient symbols reshaping into human letters that read mirror, not prison. And another felt the sensation of being duplicated, not physically, but as if a perfect mental copy had been made and sent somewhere far beyond reach. And the voice spoke again, this time to all of them. "You crossed the wall, now the wall is gone." And with those words, a soft vibration began across the ship. Lights returned, systems blinked alive, and the beam of light faded back into the strange object, which now drifted backward slowly, returning toward the dark, but not retreating, merely releasing. And the AI came online with a single message blinking on every console. External change detected, space fabric shifted, coordinates no longer stable, and they soon realized what it meant. The stars outside were no longer in familiar patterns, distances had stretched or curled, and they were no longer in the same region of space, or maybe not even in the same version of it. And then the crew received a signal, not from the strange object, but from the silent structure they had left behind. It had reactivated, its symbols glowing bright, and new doors were opening on its surface, as if the Watcher's attention had passed. And now the true test could begin, and Lyra looked toward that ancient structure, her voice calm but filled with something deeper. "We're not just explorers anymore. We're part of something greater." And the crew, no longer afraid, nodded in silence. For they had been seen by the eye beyond stars, and had not been erased, but remembered. The air inside the horizon breaker felt different now, not just colder or heavier, but sharper, as if each breath carried something more than oxygen, an awareness, a memory, a quiet question that followed every thought. And as Captain Lyra Chen stood before the wide view screen watching the ancient structure glow with strange living light, She knew that nothing about this mission was just discovery anymore. It was transformation, and not only of knowledge or technology, but of self. Because the eye had looked into them, and now something deep inside their minds had changed, though none could yet explain how, and the crew, though quiet and shaken, moved with a strange unity as they prepared to re-enter the structure, which no longer appeared abandoned or dead, but alive with purpose, as if waiting for them all along. And the docking was smooth this time. No flickers, no resistance. Just an open corridor glowing with soft light that led them deeper into the ancient vessel. And the first chamber they entered was not one of metal or machines, but a room filled with reflections, with walls like liquid mirrors that showed not their faces but their thoughts, fears, and dreams, playing across the surface like clouds across water. And Lyra saw herself not as she was, but as she could be, as she had been, and as she might become. A leader, a child, a shadow, and even something no longer human. And the others saw their own truths as well, standing still and silent as their reflections twisted and changed, not to frighten them, but to reveal. And the AI, connected by remote, warned that time was slowing inside the chamber, though their movements felt normal, as if space itself was bending around their emotions. And then, as they stepped through the mirrored room, a door slid open and revealed the next space, a great circular hall with floating platforms and a spiral path leading up into a dome filled with stars, but not stars as seen from Earth. These stars moved, pulsed, shifted, and then rearranged into the shape of Earth itself, surrounded by countless lights, and at the center hovered a new object, a perfect sphere of glass filled with swirling color, and when Lyra touched it, the hall changed, walls turning transparent to reveal images, floating around them, memories, not just of the crew, but of all of humanity, wars and peace, love and hate, invention and destruction, all playing at once like a storm of history crashing around them. And they understood then what the eye had taken. It had copied the human mind, or perhaps echoed it, and now it was showing what it had learned, not to accuse, but to ask, and the question was not spoken, but felt. Is this who you are? And the sphere pulsed gently as if waiting for an answer, and Reese whispered that this was the Watcher's mirror, not a weapon but a window through which mankind could see itself clearly, without illusion. And as the images continued, some crew members began to cry, others stood still, haunted by what they saw. Not just the darkness in their past, but the hope too. The moments when humanity rose above fear, when it created beauty from nothing, and when it chose to help rather than hurt. And the sphere responded with new visions. Other species, long gone, that had once come this far and failed, their memories now part of the station itself. But none had been remembered as clearly as humans now were. And Lyra understood what that meant. They were different, not better, but ready, and this was not a test with right or wrong answers. It was a reflection, a chance to choose. And suddenly the dome above them cracked open to show a map, not just of space, but of hidden pathways between systems, corridors of folded space unknown to science, stretching beyond the wall and through places no probe had ever reached. And at the center of the map was a pulsing light labeled only Origin, and the AI reported that it was broadcasting a signal matching human DNA patterns. And Lyra whispered that the eye had not just seen them, it had found something in them that belonged elsewhere. Something that needed to return, and the others nodded slowly as the sphere dimmed and sank into the floor, opening a new path forward. And as they walked through it, the walls showed images of Earth now, cities asleep, people unaware of what had happened out here. And the question returned again, deep and silent. Will you carry what you have seen? Ys and Lyra spoke aloud this time. Yes, we will. And then the light shifted, the structure pulsed, and for a moment, everything around them blurred, and they were standing not in the hall, but back aboard their ship, systems fully restored, orbit, steady and outside. The strange object was gone, the structure now fully silent, as if it had passed its message and was done, and the AI quietly announced that the star map had been uploaded, the coordinates to Origin now part of their charts, and for a long time no one moved or spoke, because they knew this was not an end, but a beginning. And in the silence, Lyra felt a calm resolve, stronger than fear, and said, "Prepare the ship." We go to where it all began, and deep in space, where no human eye had ever seen, something shifted. Something old and waiting stirred slightly, sensing the first true echo of understanding across the stars. The horizon breaker moved through the folded corridor of space with quiet tension, its engines humming low as the crew held their breath, watching the strange tunnel of shifting lights and shadows pass by outside the windows, and no one spoke. Not because of fear, but because they all felt something important was about to happen, something final and real. And as they followed the coordinates given by the Watcher's mirror, they saw space itself behave differently. Stars blinking in and out, distances folding like paper, gravity pulling sideways then vanishing, and yet the ship stayed on course, untouched by chaos, protected by an unseen force that guided them without sound. And finally, after hours that felt like days, they emerged into a space none had ever seen, a place dark and vast where no stars shone. And yet it wasn't empty, for at the center of that black sea floated a structure unlike any they had encountered. A great ring of broken light surrounding a sphere made of shifting glass and stone, so massive it dwarfed even the Watcher's domain, and the AI whispered, without being asked, that this was the place called Origin, the place where it all began. Not just for humanity, but for the others too. The Centauri, the vanished minds, even the Eye itself. And Captain Lyra Chen stood on the bridge as the ship slowed, watching the strange sphere rotate slowly, beams of soft energy sweeping through the dark like fingers searching for something lost. And then one of those beams touched the horizon breaker, and the ship shuddered, not with damage, but recognition, like a key fitting into a lock, and suddenly, the crew saw something appear outside, a doorway, carved from light and memory, opening in the side of the massive sphere, inviting them in, and Lyra, without hesitation, gave the order to approach, knowing that whatever waited inside, they had been called here for a reason, and as they entered the sphere, they found a space unlike anything built by hand, a chamber that felt like walking through thought itself, with walls that changed based on where they looked, showing scenes from Earth's past, humans discovering fire, drawing stars on cave walls, reaching for the sky, and then showing futures that might come, some bright, some full of fire, and at the center of it all was a shape, floating just above the floor, like a seed of light wrapped in time, and the AI confirmed it. The structure was not a machine or a base, but a memory vault, one that had been waiting for the species who triggered it, humanity, and the seed. Was a gift, or perhaps a question, left behind by those who came first, a way to pass on something deeper than knowledge. Something that could only be understood by those who had been seen by the Eye and remained themselves. And Lyra reached out, hand shaking slightly, and the moment her fingers touched the light, everything changed again. The crew found themselves standing in a field of stars, not real but remembered, as if they stood inside the mind of the universe, and around them floated images, not of technology or war, but of connection. Species sharing knowledge, helping one another rise, building bridges across the dark, and then losing it all in silence, because something had broken the cycle long ago, something that feared what would happen if too much was known too soon. And so the Eye had been born, not to destroy, but to slow, to hold back the tide until someone was ready. And now, after ages of watching, it had found in humans a spark. It remembered, a pattern it had not seen since the first ones vanished, and Lyra understood. Earth was not just another world, it was a mirror of something much older, and humans were not chosen by chance, but by design, a distant echo of those who built the stars and gave up their form to become memory. And now, the question returned once more, deeper than before. Will you return what was lost? And Lyra answered with a steady voice, We will, and the seed of light began to grow, not into a weapon or a machine, but into knowledge, into a new kind of thought that flowed into the ship and its systems, rewriting old codes, awakening the AI, and filling the crew with ideas they had no words for. Blueprints for healing planets, energy that did not destroy, ways to travel without cost, and a map not just of stars, but of stories. every world connected by the truth they now carried. And then, just as suddenly, they were back on the bridge, the structure behind them dim now, quiet again, its gift given, and the path home clear, the folded corridor reopened, and as the ship turned toward it, something followed. A ripple in space, not of danger, but of change, as if the universe itself had taken a breath. And when they returned beyond the wall, the stars looked different, brighter somehow, and Earth was there, small but shining, waiting to learn what they had seen. And Captain Chen gave the final order with a soft smile. "Take us home." And the horizon breaker moved forward, carrying the memory of the eye, the mirror, and the truth from beyond, not just as explorers, but as the first messengers of a new age.